Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we will continue our review to a woman who divorced her husband and her mother-in-law didn't approve this, then try to kidnap the woman's baby. In case you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, I recommend you to watch it in our channel to understand the story. Let's get right into it. So after my ex-in-laws were banned from my job, I sought the counsel of an attorney. I didn't want to wait it out anymore in hopes that they would just go away, as I have in the past. I'm going for the jugular with this, so to speak. I filed for an emergency restraining order, citing that my kids and I aren't safe around my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband. Ex-father-in-law is just a shell that lets ex-mother-in-law get away with crap and doesn't put her in her place. My restraining order was granted temporarily within 24 hours, thanks to all of the evidence I was able to provide. My ex-in-laws and Bill both were served that very same day. We had a hearing on the day before Christmas Eve, where I was able to plead my case, and the judge got to see all of the evidence I had proving why. Bill and my ex-mother-in-law are dangerous for me and my kids. Ex-mother-in-law tried to pull a classic tactic of crying and wailing whenever I talked, so the judge would have to stop the proceedings to tell her to shut the F up. Eventually, I got through what I wanted to say and showed what I wanted. Then, ex-mother-in-law and Bill were given the chance to say their piece. Ex-mother-in-law shushed Bill and completely stuck her foot into her mouth by blabbering on about how she didn't deserve to be attacked. The judge reminded her that Bill and I are legally divorced, and ex-mother-in-law shouted at him that no power on earth has the right to sever a marriage that is morally and spiritually binding forever. I was chosen to be Bill's wife by God, and I will honor it, or there will be consequences. The judge asked her what she meant, and ex-mother-in-law tried to play coy and say, "OP will see." The judge then asked Bill to say his piece. Bill looked uncomfortable. He tried to stand up, but ex-mother-in-law grabbed his arm and told him to sit down. The judge threatened to hold her in contempt, and she let go, grumbling at him. Bill then stood up and moved away from ex-mother-in-law. He started ranting about how crazy she is and that he didn't want to be there. He said he thought he could manipulate me into sleeping with him, but he got tossed out on his ass when he tried, and he gave up then and there. Ex-mother-in-law is the one that is doing all of this, and he wants no part of it anymore. His life is ruined because everything he has done has been in an attempt to appease her, and it has blown up in his face. He then begged the judge to uphold the restraining order because ex-mother-in-law told them that she plans to hurt me if I didn't comply with her demands. He said she was dangerous and unhinged and suggested she needed some kind of psychological help. Ex-mother-in-law was effing speechless, but one couldn't deny the look of absolute guilt plastered on her face. Turns out she does need psychological help. Ex-father-in-law stood up and asked to say a few words. The judge agreed because he looked to be entertained by the three-ring circus playing out in front of him. Ex-father-in-law went up to stand beside Bill and confessed to the judge that ex-mother-in-law is suffering from the effects of dementia, and it has been a closely guarded secret between them for the past 2 years. Ex-mother-in-law was receiving treatment, but stopped when Bill and I moved away from the old state. Since then, she has gotten worse, and he fears what she will do if left allowed to roam free. They have always been religious, but when ex-mother-in-law stopped treatment, she began experiencing psychotic episodes and illusions of grandeur. He also confessed that if I had agreed to let my youngest go on holiday with them, my ex-mother-in-law had no intention of bringing him back. My jaw hit the floor. Ex-father-in-law looked at me and pled for forgiveness for not putting a stop to the insanity sooner. Bill also apologized for the hell he had put me through, stating he had been an idiot and hoped I could forgive him. Everything seemed to fall into place, and things made sense. I never mentioned it, but I did notice whenever I saw ex-mother-in-law, she would be forgetful and stare off into space. She seemed confused at times, and sometimes she didn't know who people were. I thought it was an act to avoid dealing with people. It was then I heard ex-mother-in-law shrieking. She got up and ran at ex-father-in-law and began beating on him until the bailiff pulled her off of him. She was put into cuffs, and the judge ordered her to undergo 90 days in a psychiatric treatment facility. She screamed, wailed, and kicked as she was carried out of the room. The restraining order was granted for a year. I was completely numb and had no reaction when the verdict was given. I was confused and gobsmacked out of my effing mind at what I had just heard. I almost don't believe it happened, and wondered if that edible I ate beforehand to calm my nerves was effing with my head. I spoke to ex-father-in-law after court. He is taking Bill back home to the old state to help him get back on his feet. He promised me he and Bill will never bother me again, and once ex-mother-in-law is released, he will ensure she doesn't either. I went home and hugged my kids, and we went out to look at Christmas lights that night. Christmas was great. Hope yours was too. Extended from OP's comments, I've been researching dementia since that day. I had no idea how horrible it actually was until I started looking more into it. I feel so bad for her, but at the same time, she cannot come near me or my kids while she's like this. Ex-father-in-law told me that Bill had no clue about the diagnosis. Ex-mother-in-law never wanted to show that type of weakness to anyone, especially to her own son. Ex-mother-in-law's recent behavior came as a shock to him as it did to me, but because he is her son, he went along with it to try to please her. He is a mama's boy, and I can tell this broke him. I learned that ex-mother-in-law was trying to take me to court to take my son away from me. She didn't get far, as Bill chose to terminate his rights, and she had only met my youngest once, leaving her high and dry with no legal leg to stand on. I honestly don't know why Bill chose to go along with her insanity. He's always tried pleasing her ever since he was a kid. Ex-father-in-law knew that ex-mother-in-law had no intention of bringing my son back if I let him go on holiday with them, and he was afraid of her. I think once he got into court, he suddenly grew a pair and felt safe enough to confess the truth. That's the end of this crazy story. Leave your comments in the comment sections to tell us how you feel about this story, and I will see you in the next video.